Today's discussion is going to be focusing on better understanding our prospects. One of the reasons why we focus on this is because the more we understand them, the better we can cater to their needs. And that's really ultimately what's going to help us get those appointments. We'll talk about how that works. But there's two different reports that we're going to look at today in order to make this possible. Today's discussion is more of an extension of our last training, which was the customer sales strategy. If you remember this call, or if you didn't attend, essentially what this strategy entails is performing surveys of our customers' customers, so better understanding their customer base in order to better understand their business, which then enables us to have a better vision of how our products and services can help them. So if you missed that training again, you can go and review that. But again, this is a similar concept but different. One of the reasons why our prospects don't respond is because of patterns. What happens is, and within our brains are designed to manage lots and lots of information, which is especially relevant today. As time goes on, if our brains get too much information, it basically tries to oversimplify it by looking for patterns. The patterns allows it to manage vast amounts of information that are thrown at it in order to make quick decisions, in order to not have to go into all the different details. So oftentimes you may get emails like this where it says, do you have a moment to speak next week? I'd like to know if you're interested in a multi-touch, multi-channel marketing program to boost up your revenue. Obviously this isn't technology related, but a lot of marketing emails sound similar. A lot of them sound, you can start to see the patterns across the emails. And when you're going through your inbox, you're looking for those patterns. So in order for your prospects to respond, we have to break those patterns. That's the key to getting a response from your prospects. And so that's what we're going to try to do today, is create a new pattern that will cause your prospects to think a little bit more about this, because it's going to be outside of what they're used to seeing. To start, we're going to go to the upsellreport.com. Some of you may have seen this. We've talked about this from time to time. The purpose of this report is really to get you ready for any type of meeting, which is really what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to get the meeting. But this is going to be instrumental in getting us to that next step. So the upsellreport.com is basically a 360-degree view of any client. So there's a number of robotic spiders that go out and try to gather information about companies that we've put together to help put this report together for you. And so the report itself has lots of different sections. You can see that on the left-hand side of the page. And for those of you that are driving, I'll try to describe this as best as I can. But there's a high-level overview, what the company does, what kind of industry they're in, a description, how their Alexa ranking looks like. This kind of gives you that high-level overview. The next section is related companies, so any companies that are in the same space that would be considered competitors. We have a contact section, locations, phone details, technology overview, current job openings, and recent changes. To kind of walk you through a few of these sections again, it's just kind of giving you all these different data points so that you can see what types of data points we have about this company. So it's really designed to give you that high-level perspective. The most popular section here is really the contacts and the technology overview. Well, we're going to use this a lot in today's strategy, but we really need to understand where they're at today in order to make assessments and recommendations in anything that we're doing with these companies. So in the technology overview, you see whatever technology we can detect about this company based off of public data points. The system is going to incorporate all of that information here. We also track outages as part of our platform, and so you'll see those within that section. This is the latest outages within the last 12 months. And so that's also an important data point that you want to make sure that you have in mind as you're talking to these clients. Now, not all data points are always, I wouldn't say accurate, I would say something you want to make sure that you don't just assume that they have this technology. Sometimes data points, maybe they have a widget on their website that's out of date, and we're using that to assume that they're using a specific type of CRM or email platform. And so when you're working with the clients, you don't want to say, it looks like, I see that you're using Office 365. You can say, it looks like you're using Office 365. Is that correct? And so that's just an important angle as you're talking to clients. And now, again, the Upsell Report, what this is going to do is help create some context for today's discussion. You can also look at a lot of different data points in terms of recent changes, which is also helpful to help expand your perspective. Now, the second part of this strategy is going to involve another tool that we've put together. Some of you have used it, but it's listanalytics.org. And that is an S at the end of analytics. But this is going to be instrumental in today's discussion, and you'll see why here in just a second. What List Analytics does is similar to what we do with the Upsell Report. It's giving you expanded view of everything that we're seeing. So we'll talk about how we can gather a client list from the client at the end. But just keep in mind, when you go to listanalytics.org, you simply upload a list of websites or company names that your client uses. And the system will automatically run analytics on that list to see what those companies have in common. And this would be really helpful for your discussion, because the more we understand our clients, the better it is for us to advise them and to ultimately gain their business. So this List Analytics platform helps us dive deeper into what types of technologies their clients use, where their clients are located. And we'll go through a few examples, but in this particular case, 35% of their clients use Office 365, and 28% use Gmail, and then it kind of goes down from there. So if I was catering to this company, I would say something like this: I've run some analytics on your customer base. I don't mention how, because that helps pique their attention and say, I'd like to know how you figured this out. And notice that 35% of your clients use Office 365. If you switch to Office 365, it may improve your customers' interaction with your team. Do you have a few minutes to connect? So that type of email breaks that pattern that we talked about originally, where it's not necessarily, hey, all right, have you considered switching to hosted voice, or have you considered using Office 365? This catches them off guard, which breaks the pattern and ultimately gets the responses that we're looking at. So hopefully you can kind of see what direction we're taking with this. But having this type of insight, and then also understanding what type of advantage would it be for you to have Office 365 and your clients to have Office 365? How might that change the way you support your customers? Another data point is, what types of office buildings do these clients have in common? And in this particular case, 45% use retail. So again, this is just different strategies that you could use with this data, but you could say something like this: I've run some analytics on your customer base, and notice that 45% of your clients use retail office space. I've worked with retail technology clients for more than a decade, and I think we should do a joint webinar to discuss the latest and greatest technologies in this space. So maybe that's something that you could do to help use them kind of like a referral partner. But again, this might be something that would be interesting for you to talk about with them and say, maybe there's something else we can do there. But off the bat, you're helping demonstrate that you know their business at a level that they don't even understand. But here's where you can start to add value and talk to them. Maybe you have a specific technology that could add value, but maybe you could also pull a list of retail clients and include their clients as well, and win a lot of business together and leverage that influence that they have, and help them feel like an authority in that space as well. Another example, there's millions of different data points here, but in this particular example, we're seeing that 43% of their clients use Proofpoint as their email security solution. So if this was the case, you could say, again, I've ran some analytics, and notice that a majority of your clients are using Proofpoint for their email security. What are you doing for email security? So again, you catch them off guard with the fact that you understand their client base, but then if their client base is using email security or IT security or a specific company, what are they doing? And if you were to have a discussion with them, you could say, look, your clients seem to care a lot about email security. If you have an email breach where somebody gets into your inbox and starts sending out false emails, what kind of image would they have about your business? And this ultimately, when you connect the product or service that you're trying to sell them to the image that their clients have about them, that's a big influencer and could certainly add some weight to the discussion. Another example is looking at the data center providers that these companies are using. In this case, 75% of the clients of this company is using Azure. This would be a good discussion if this is a technology company or has some type of a platform that their clients interact with. But you could say, I've run some analytics and noticed that a lot of your clients are using Azure, but it looks like you're using AWS. And that's why it's important to have that upsell report, because you need to have that context. If they're already using Azure, it doesn't really help. But if there's a gap here between what their clients are using and what they're using, switching over to Azure may create a shorter latency or a better security connection between the two. And so it may just be a good idea to talk about, what are the advantages of switching to Azure if your clients are using Azure? What kind of shortcuts can you create for them? How can you improve the customer experience? So you can kind of see a little bit about how understanding their clients here and understanding how switching to one provider or the other would make sense, but you need to be able to understand how those products and services can help provide advantages in these types of scenarios. So there's a lot of reading in between the lines here, and it requires a lot of deep understanding of the products and services and how they work, but understanding things at that level is ultimately what creates the value that you're providing. But in each of these customer or prospect interactions, you can start to see how we're breaking that pattern of, this isn't just another sales email. This is somebody that understands my business, and I'd like to talk to them more. There's value here. They can see that value. Another example is this company's clients from a marketing automation solution is primarily using Marketo, 75% in fact. And so you may consider saying, look, maybe I can put together a list of Marketo clients for you in your backyard using the Ensable platform, and I can send that over. And that could be a joint webinar that you do together to talk about maybe their technology and their solutions and your solutions can create a joint opportunity together or something along those lines. But there may be some data points here that if we can measure it here in the analytics report, then we have enough data on it on the back end to actually build a list for you. There's lots of different ways that you can run with that, whether it's a joint webinar or a joint marketing campaign, but you can turn your prospect into a referral partner and create a joint solution like we've talked about in the past using a lead exchange. Another example of a data point that you can look at is it breaks down the offices of their clients are. So in some cases, you may run a report for New York City for their clients and looking up clients in that market, but California happens to be on top, and that's because we look at all of their offices, not just their headquarters. But in this case, the client base for this client has the largest market is California. And if this was the case, you may consider reaching out to them and applying what we talked about in the past using government referrals. We won't go into too much detail about that today, but basically, if most of their clients are in California but they don't have a presence there, it may make sense to say, have you considered opening an office in California? From a government referral standpoint, every market has what we call an economic development office. The economic development office is constantly trying to attract businesses to move to a specific area in order to bring jobs, which are always important to those markets. And so if you understand what types of businesses they're looking for, have a relationship or a connection with those economic development offices, you're in a position to make recommendations to them and say, look, I have a company who has a lot of clients in your area. Would you be willing to entertain a conversation about having them move here? And so if you have those kind of conversations, which most governments are more than willing to do because that's the purpose of the economic development offices, you could write an email saying something like this. I've read some analytics and noticed that a lot of your clients are based out of California. I have some connections with the California Economic Development Office and might be able to introduce you to some people who can help you provide funding for a new office. Would you be willing to connect? So when your client sees this type of email, you can see again why they would respond. And helping them move offices, obviously they're going to need a lot of services, but it helps you open up a conversation at a high level and really differentiate yourself, provide a different level of value, and then you can talk more about strategy and what else you've learned about their client base. But again, if you have the information, you now have value. Because ultimately, our greatest competitor is Google. Your clients are going to do the research for new products and services based off of what they can identify and uncover through a Google search. They're going to try to figure out who's the best hosted voice provider, who's the best IT security provider. But that knowledge is helpful, but what you're offering here is different, and it's not available through Google. And that's how you're going to be able to differentiate yourself. You're going to be able to provide value. And ultimately, you're going to create a monopoly for yourself because nobody else would have access to this. And so this is how you can help open up new doors. Now, again, this is a cumbersome process. I understand that. We can't, it's not entirely scalable, but it's better than trying to approach conversations using the old methodology, if that makes sense. Now, we talked about at the beginning that we need to identify their clients before we can run the analytics. If you go to Google Maps, it's not hard to find a list of clients here. It's going to take a little bit of research, but you can go to any Google Maps for any of your clients, and this only works again in the B2B space, but you can pull a list of all of their clients from the review section and put together at least a preliminary list. In order to run analytics, we probably need at least 30 to 40 companies in that list in order to look for commonalities. So if you put in 2 or 3, it's not going to do much for you. But the more data that you can add to the list analytics tool, the easier it will be for us to run and expand the data sets. It needs enough data to really run the analytics. But you can go to Google Reviews. A lot of companies have more than 1,000 reviews in there. And you'll be able to go in, build a list of companies who use their service, and then run the analytics tool. And then hopefully, with time, they'll provide you with the full customer list, and you'll be able to do deeper analytics and recommendations for them. But this is to get us in the door. They're not going to hand over the customer list on that just by calling them, but providing a preliminary list will certainly make it a lot easier for you to actually accomplish that. So hopefully that made sense for everybody. Again, the idea here is to build a list of companies that use your prospect service. Run analytics on both the company using the Upsell Report to help you understand the context of what you're dealing with, and then run analytics on their customer base to see what they have in common. And then use the 2 reports to see if there's a way to provide additional value to the clients between what their clients use today and what they're not using, what your prospect isn't using, and seeing if there's a way to provide value between the 2, and reading in between the lines in order to have a conversation with them. So hopefully that helps everyone.